Tich Tyson.
Hello.
Paul Tyson.
I was called Paul from the start of my life, but from there on in I inherited the name Tich and it sort of stuck.
Yeah, all right. Just as well you don't mind.
No, don't mind either. It's good.
Now, Bill Hignett, I was news director of 5DN in the mid-70s, and John Gregory came in for an interview once, and he had those glasses that go dark in the sun, and he was there he'd been at a press conference or something, and it was on Channel 9, and it just looked like he was a mafia don. So when he came into 5DN this particular time, I just mentioned to him that he really needs to take the glasses off when that was the first time I'd met John. And so then from there, it developed a relationship. And when he was at the Institute of Teachers, I went in there and met Bill for the first time. And Bill was sitting there like a little Buddha with this enigmatic smile on his face, which suggested that he was up to no good. Or if not, there was something going to happen in the not too distant future that someone would have to pay for. So I really liked him. I trusted him. He was just had that nature of, friendly and welcoming and warm.
Yep.
How did you meet him?
I met Bill many years ago through Bill Denny, and a lot of years ago. I can't remember how many back, but it was at the time when we'd started our veteran centre up down at the RSL, and Bill was still working for the Teachers Union and Vietnam veteran like me, and was in 86 Transport Platoon, and I was in 87 Transport Platoon, and we always said one better. But we met Bill through a series of lunches, and two things. I failed to get him to come in and do a claim for his health condition. I failed. But I did get him interested in veterans advocacy. And he told me that when he retired from the Teachers Union and teaching, he would become an advocate. And he kept his word. So
from the sounds of it, you recruited Bill.
I did, yes.
What did you see in Bill that made you think that he'd be a good advocate?
He had the aptitude, and I could see what he was doing for his people in 86 Transport Platoon. He was also already an advocate. Lining them up with DVA, explaining entitlements to them, looking after war widows, the wives, and just a natural transfer to us was basically all was needed. So I kept at him and Sally till eventually he came in. And can I relate a story here?
Oh, well, please do.
And this will be at his eulogy. On the day Bill arrived in the Veteran Centre, we had a young Afghan veteran present himself. He'd come back from Afghanistan. His wife had left the scene. He had two children, one suffering from problems, and this kid had no money, had his parents' support, two children. It was Bill's first day. So what I did initially, as we do with people that are in that situation, we organised a food voucher for him. We ordered fuel vouchers, etc., and then started the claims process. Ruddy would have done that to get this young fella a claim through DVA. And that was Bill's first day. And so we worked out an action plan for the young man and his family. And I thought, well, that's good. We got this guy going. Then the next day, Bill came back to the Veteran Centre with a wad of fuel vouchers and food vouchers. And I said to Bill, where did you get those? And he said to me, just ways and means. And from that day forth, I think he decided not to be an advocate, but he'd be better served as a manager.
Yeah, that's so typical of Bill, isn't it?
Mm.
Yeah. Can you just tell me a little bit more about yourself, about what happened with the Transport Battalion or what happened?
I was in Vietnam in 1971 in a medical unit, although I was a driver in medical unit and other jobs. And believe me, Bill's unit was right next door, but I didn't know Bill at the time. We would sometimes sneak across to his boozer and watch a movie and thing with him, but it wasn't until I got back into the South Australian veteran community that I met Bill. And we had a veteran centre at the Plymouth Glenelg RSL, and we used to have a Friday veterans lunch, and that's where Bill would attend that. We'd have a long lunch, and we started to talk about the business. We had one thing in common, that Bill Denny was his OC in Vietnam, and my OC in Adelaide. So I had gone, when I left the Defence Force in 2004, I had some underlying issues. I went to that Veterans Centre where another 86 Transport fellow who'd become an RSM, Dean O'Ryan, was, and helped me with my claim through DVA. You know, I knew I had underlying anger issues, drinking problems, etc., and a sharp temper. And so by going to psychologists and psychiatrists, it was diagnosed that I had PTSD. So I did my claim and a few other issues, and then I was made totally and permanently incapacitated. So Dean O'Ryan had said to me, let's use your skills, and how about you becoming an advocate? So I started my advocacy career in 2004 and developed a passion for it. Then during that time, a war widow came in. Her husband had been the CO or OC in 27 Battalion in New Guinea, and she was a war widow, and things weren't happening around the house for her. So I was given the task to look after the war widow, and I found through Department of Veterans Affairs that we had wellbeing officers that arranged such things. So I decided to go down that path, and I did. I became an advocate. I did all my courses. I then moved into a position within DVA when a Commander, Robin Pennock, passed away suddenly, who used to run the courses. I took over for Robin at Department of Veterans Affairs as the veteran, organising courses for people, both advocacy and wellbeing. So we got to handpick advocates or negatively counsel people that weren't suitable because, you know, you set them up to fail. I didn't want to do that. So I went down the line of advocacy, and then, of course, Bill came on board, and then things erupted with the deployments to Afghanistan or Iraq, East Timor and other places. We suddenly had a lot of young veterans coming back with no one to help them. And look, I've got a son that has served on multiple deployments, East Timor, Iraq, 4 times, I think, to Afghanistan. He's okay. He's working well at the moment. I keep my eye on him. So I've got a vested interest in this, and I've got a grandson now serving. So we really are a defence family. But my key plan was to get a creditable advocacy service happening here in Adelaide. Advocacy Training and Development Plan came on the scene in around about 2016, which I joined up to, which is now national, and it affords a accreditation for advocates. So they come away with a TAFE accreditation in advocacy and in wellbeing. And of course, Graham Rudd is one of those, very highly accredited. So we have a good standard of advocates working in the veteran community. So from there, another case happened where a young fella came in one day, a young sapper, and Bill and myself were helping out with his university studies. He was becoming an engineer, 2 tours of Afghanistan. At the same time, Nicole Flint presented at our Veteran Centre and wanted to come in. She came in on this interview, and she was able to help Bill and help the veteran. But she then said, I have an offer for you people to move back to the repat. Would you be the ex-service organisation to do that? So Bill and I sat down over a few beers in the RSL and said, we think we could do that. And we did. And so that the story of us being at the repat is largely due to Bill Hignett. With my help, then Bill got a vision to expand further. He started to talk to his friends down around Mount Burr, Millicent, the southeast. Came in one day and said, Tich, we're going to Mount Gambier. I said, why would I want to go to Mount Gambier? And he said, because we're going to set up advocacy in the southeast. I said, all right, Bill, if you want to do that, I'll do that. And we did. The rest is history there. Bill went off, and I didn't want to do it, went off to it was a big meeting in Brisbane. And what I don't like is dealing with bureaucrats. I have no time for them. But these people were bureaucrats and high-ranking generals and other people that had a vision for this advocacy training and development program. So we sent Bill. Bill went to the meeting. And I know from people at that meeting how he held the audience. So can you imagine being in that room and they do a talk around the table. Hello, I'm Brigadier Billy Bloggs. I'm Major General Smith. I'm Captain so-and-so. I'm Colonel so-and-so. And then a man says, I'm Private Bill Hignett from 86 Transport Platoon, Vietnam. And that's how it all started. And I know that we did a lot of trips down to the southeast, and phones would ring, and it'd be Brigadier Caligari. It'd be someone else talking to Bill and asking him advice. They could not believe that Bill was a private in the Australian Army. So, that was Bill.
And a NASHO.
And a national serviceman that served an incredibly long time in Vietnam. Rather than come home, Bill must have got called up, deferred for a while, then went in. He would have done his recruit training at Puckapunyal. Then he would have did the driver training at the Rasky Centre across the road. Probably that took up 7 or 8 months, and bang, he was in Vietnam. So the time his tour was finished in 1970, early 71, he still had 6 months to go, so he extended in Vietnam, stayed in Vietnam, and did round about 18 months in Vietnam, rather than come home and sit around Keswick Barracks and pick up papers and work in officers' messes and so forth. He elected to do that. So, yeah, he's got a very, very good veterans record. And, yeah.
You weren't involved in his illegal boozer operation, was you?
No, but I did hear about it. The Phantom Boozer. No, I did hear about it. And it was only years later they found out about that. But why not? As a digger, and the opportunity presents, you take these chances. So
it's the Gallipoli tradition.
It is indeed. Yeah, beg, borrow and steal from the Americans. That's what we did.
Now, you're a wellbeing advocate.
I am.
Or you're the lead in that.
I'm the senior wellbeing officer, yeah.
Can you just run me through what that entails?
So it's become very diverse in that DVA has brought in this non-liability healthcare claims, which supports mental health and other illnesses, which we are trained in. So we can help out with claims through DVA, those. However, it's looking after, once the person is on the gold card, it's knowing the entitlements of DVA, their entitlements through DVA, what they're entitled to. For example, we hear sometimes that a war widow's out there paying someone to clean her house, whereas that gold card that she's received from her husband, being a widow, covered by household services through DVA. So it's a matter of navigating through various ways and means. We also have something that was very close to Bill Hignett's heart, Veterans Children's Education Schemes, in that once a defence member becomes TPI and has kids at school, there's an Veterans Children's Education Scheme. So we link people up to that, try to make the people aware that they're out there, they can get terrific education for their children through Veterans Children's Education Scheme is one of them. So there's a myriad of things that we do in the wellbeing scope.
Can I just ask you about the education one?
Yes.
Army brats frequently in their young lives might go to 4 or 5 or 6 schools on a year or 2-year rotational basis. My feeling about that is that they're probably therefore behind their peers. How does that sort of fit into what you're doing with your wellbeing?
Well, my children were victims of that. My children in my service, my 30-something years, served in South Australia, Victoria, Queensland, back to South Australia, back to Queensland. So, yes, being DVA and it's national, it helps out a lot. I think the people that currently serve don't get that. They do have education officers in the Defence Force that do look out, but with us, we can, depending where the child is, and we are now national, we can align through DVA, can align support to those children in those places. If there's an extra tuitional needed, DVA will pay for that. They will look after them from the age of secondary right through to the age of 25. However, if that child is in a university course, they will look after them until that course finishes.
I don't know if it's me just getting older or whether this is really happening, but the extent of PTSD that's now being reported among military vets seems to be significantly increased over the last 10 years or so. Is that your experience with that?
Oh, lots. And can I tell you my theory? And I'd like it invested. PTSD is infectious. It spreads from dad to mum to the kids, and I don't know. We know that there's something that happens in your career, in your life, an instance, and no doubt these kids that live at home have seen dad in a bad way and experience it. So I believe that's infectious. And I believe that some children have got an entitlement to that. However, under the Acts, they don't. They will get support, but yeah, PTSD is infectious.
There's always a ripple effect with engagement, or foreign engagements, and where there's damage caused, mental or otherwise.
Yes.
But going back to World War One, I know personally my mother had no time for her father because he was a SOM, won a military medal, but became a drunk. And so her relationship was completely destroyed with him, and so was mine. So it wasn't until much, much later, for example, I knew that found out that he won the military medal, and the reason why. So that ripple effect just cascades through the generations and through a family. Yeah. And it's very hard to sort of define, well, they've got PTSD, but they don't. They don't suffer from it directly, but they are sufferers of it.
Yep. We have the denial cause with a lot of veterans who laugh at us a bit and say, what are you doing? They're in denial. And I've no doubt your grandfather may have been in denial. And of course, now that we've got the knowledge that we have now of PTSD and the way we have people attending courses, wives through Open Arms and what was VVCS, Veterans Counselling Services, through that, the people that studied that, Dale Fotheringham was like Bill, a national serviceman who came back, became a psychologist, and made a series of DVDs, etc., about dealing with PTSD. He likened it, if I can say a story here, to explain to a civilian, if you're sitting in Rundle Mall having a cup of coffee, sitting there having a cup of coffee, and a vehicle careers out of control and runs towards you, as a civilian, what are you going to do? You're going to run away. The veteran is trained to run at the car, run into the ambush. So that's what people are dealing with. I'm currently attending a veterans program at Port Adelaide Footy Club at the moment, and we have a series of people that are talking to us about PTSD. Their knowledge has surprised me in the sports world, that these people are aligning young veterans to young football players. In that, the other night there was a discussion about delisted players. So you come in 1 week, the locker's cleaned up, and that guy's gone. A young veteran stood up and spoke for about 10 minutes about he would come back from a patrol, KIA, the room's cleaned and the person's gone. Back to work, back on the truck tomorrow, back into the carrier tomorrow, carry on with your job. There's no place in the field to get you. You might get some 5 minutes of talking to someone, but the rest is back to work. Get on with what you're trying to do, be a soldier. So you're right, and there's the ripple effect there, because, that now these days, as you well know, later that night, that soldier is on the nav phone to mum and dad, or mum, or the kids, talking about the incident. And it's a bit different than what your grandfather would have 3 months for a letter to get home and back and forth, and Anzac Bicky's coming over. But these days it's in the now. We're living in the now. So I'll go back to what you asked me about advocacy. The compensation can take time. Wellbeing is in the now. If you've got a person that's ringing, or you've got a person in a room and they're ringing you about suicide assist, it's now. And you have to, I think I've had about 8 of them, where you get the call. But you've got mechanisms, because they'll listen to you, but they won't listen to the wife. They won't listen to the policeman knocking at the door. They'll be wanting to talk to you, talking them down. And we've had that happen.
Do you find that in dealing with these cases, there's almost a secondary level of PTSD for you in having to deal with their trauma? Is that reflected in any way back on you?
Probably, but I've got ways and means that I think Bill probably taught me that, how we deal with it. You know, we keep it within the veteran community. We keep it within our workplace. I can go down to the Repat Veteran Centre. I can sit with Ruddy for an hour and do it that way. I'd rather do it that way. I tried with some of the psychiatrists around Adelaide, and they're very good, and they're very good at writing reports. But I think listening to your story, they hear so many, they're insular. They don't. There's no value there for I don't think. I don't want veterans not to go there because they may find it, but I did not. You know, some 15 years ago, my relief was talking to other veterans.
I don't know if you know Sandy McFarlane.
I do very well.
Yeah.
I've worked on projects with Sandy.
I chatted to him 10 years ago, I suppose now. It's been a while. But he told me that any person who has served with the military overseas, seen action, not action, but been in, seen action. I mean, peacekeeping forces and what have you.
Oh, yeah.
He said they 100% will get PTSD.
Yeah.
And I was quibbling with him. I said, well, no, that doesn't sound right to me. And he said, no, 100%, which then makes me think, what's the Defence Department doing in the sense that or the Army, the military, knowing that that's the consequence, already knowing, guaranteed, why aren't they doing something up front to intervene?
So when a force deploys, there's a debrief. And I've got this from a very, very close authority in that it's done as a group, and they say to you, does anyone want to bring any matters up of what's happened in the last few months? And you're sitting in a room full of other people. Are you going to put your hand up? No. You get home. You might be, prior to getting home, you get another debrief. All people want to do is get away and get home. And then, of course, I'm okay. And I don't know if Defence have fixed that problem up. Now, I know Sandy McFarlane's work is much into that, but, there's some very good people in Canberra that are well aware of that. But, I think the system of, for example, Rwanda, the massacre at Rwanda, and I had some of my soldiers went to that. I've got a couple of good friends and some are masking it, that I watch. I know that they've got PTSD. One's a policeman, and a good policeman. But, there's more that Defence could do, not rush them out, not treat them like lepers and separate them from the group.
If I heard someone say, no, I'm fine, that's the first thing I'd be doing is saying, no, you're not.
No, you're not. No, you're not.
I asked Ruddy this as well about, the trauma is not gender specific, and you don't seem to have a lot of women on your advocacy roles.
We don't seem to have many young veterans on our advocacy roles, let alone women.
There you go.
So it worries me in that, and I read an article this morning about Vietnam veteran suicide. Around about 1974-75, DVA had records of 200 or 300 Vietnam veterans that committed suicide. They never learned anything from that because that's happened again. So at the moment, young veterans are generally not presenting to help like I think the Vietnam veteran class did. I'm hoping that might change.
Why aren't they doing it?
They're offering new careers. They've off raising families. We've had a couple of them have put their toes in the water and tested it, but they've got kids at school. And, of course, being on a TPI pension is not much. If you've got a wife that works, you take over the role of being the housekeeper, a lot of them, and some of our guys down south are doing that. But, there's there is an issue that maybe sooner or later they will start to present. It was a Vietnam veteran that set the precedent about the advocacy. But unfortunately, many of our young people aren't following us into it.
You're stuck with this for life.
Yeah, you're right. I'd be happy to do that. I don't want to rot at home. I'd rather be down there with the boys and girls and doing what we do and travelling, training. I'm in the training scope. And I gave up an interview today with a lady that's going to become an advocate, and I'll fix it up later. But it was going to be today, but we changed that to come here. So it's good.
Blame John Gregory for that.
I would indeed. There'd be beers later on tonight. So
What? We could talk for hours, but is there a particular question I should have asked you that I haven't done?
No, I think you've covered it pretty well. The ex-service organisation of Australia. Perhaps one of the questions you could have asked, I'll say the ESOs, because some of them employ people. So how are we going to pay for paid advocates? We have to compete. So you could have asked me, what's a better system? A paid advocate is a better system that comes to work. But who's going to pay for that? DVA do fund us to a certain extent. Ex-service organisations like the RSL pay a little bit. Who's going to fund it? I have trained I'm training a paid RSL person at the moment in wellbeing, a female too. And but who's going to pay for it? My question is, when we hear the budget tonight, is there any money in there set aside to not to give to DVA to put it out there, because they'll, the bigger and better type ESO, for example, in Queensland where they have raffles and houses for sale for raffles, and they make a lot of money, so they pay. But here in South Australia, we don't have the same. You can buy tickets in that raffle in Queensland, in Adelaide, and money goes back to Queensland. And they have, like Harvey Bay. Recently, we did a case for a couple of veterans in Whyalla who were from Harvey Bay, stuck. We rang Harvey Bay RSL, and straight away they put money into these people's accounts to get them fuel, get them food. So South Australia's lacking in that area. So where's the money going to come from for paid advocates? I'd like to see that before I retire.